COVID-19 has ruined everything for everyone, including sports. For the first time in a very long time, sports have been pushed back for several months in which they don't play. But most are dedicated to finishing what they started, especially football. Now, one sports company that has maintained control of the virus the most successfully has been the National Basketball Association. Now, the NFL has scheduled to start the season on time despite all the COVID-19 madness. But you really have to take into consideration how is the NFL going to keep its players healthy throughout the season from September to early February. Now, you have to think about this. These teams will still have to travel cross country to all these different cities. Some cities have it under control, some cities don't have that same success rate, making it more difficult to combat and control possible positive tests for the virus. Not to mention that some of these NFL franchises are still stubborn to the fact that they will still allow in-person attendance to a certain degree, which makes it even more vulnerable for players and staff. Now, I'm pretty sure you're thinking, why don't the NFL just do what the NBA did with its bubble format? That's a good question, but here's the problem. The NBA has fewer players on its rosters than NFL teams would have. So if you did the math, then you could tell that there's no way that the NFL could set up a bubble in one city for all 32 teams. But the NFL could look forward to having a postseason bubble, which would be more realistic. Let me explain. Before we can begin NFL bubble talk, let's do some math for a little bit. We all know that the NFL has 32 teams in the league, while the NBA has 30 teams. Well, the NBA only has 15-man rosters. So when the NBA resumed play in Orlando, the NBA only invited 22 teams. So let's get back to the math. With 22 teams and 15 players per roster, that comes out to at least 330 players in the bubble. Now, the NFL, according to the new CBA, each NFL team has 55 players on it. So when you add it up, it comes down to a total of over 1,700 total players to put in a bubble situation. Now, looking at the numbers alone, you can see that the NBA bubble will be a better idea. Less players lessens the risk of infections. But here's how the NFL could make this more realistic. When the 2020 regular season comes to an end, the playoff bubble will work better. Under the new CBA, there are now 2 extra playoff spots for each conference. So there will be a total of 14 teams in the playoffs, which adds up to 770 players in one bubble. Here's how the NFL could be a step ahead of the NBA. Instead of having both conferences in the same location, the NFL should have 2 hub cities. The AFC should have an AFC city, and the NFC should have their own hub city. If the NFL does that, then you will have 385 players in 2 cities, and the number will go down per playoff round, with teams being eliminated. If you're able to control the population with less players, then that means less likely the risk of COVID being contracted. Maybe an idea for a hub city will be each of the number 1 seeds in the AFC/NFC to host conference playoffs, or pick one of the biggest cities from each conference that could accommodate a couple hundreds of people. All the NFL has to do is what they've been doing in training camp already. Daily tests, social distance, and daily sanitizing, etc. One reason why a bubble makes more sense is that most teams won't have crowds, so I don't think that there will be a home field advantage in empty stadiums and don't have to worry about air travel. This will only be a 3-week event, so afterwards the teams that represent the AFC and the NFC will travel to Tampa Bay to play the Super Bowl. What do you think about an NFL bubble? Leave your comments down below. If you liked the video, I appreciate a like, as well as if you could subscribe to the channel. It'll help out a lot. I'll see you next time.